Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, and this week we have part 2 of my conversation with Makmid Kamara. He is a human rights leader, researcher, activist, and development communications practitioner with 2 decades of experience working with national and international development and human rights organizations in Africa and the United Kingdom. He is currently the director of the African Transitional Justice Legacy Fund, which is based in Accra, Ghana. Prior to joining ATJ-LF, he worked at Amnesty International's International Secretariat in London as Deputy Director of Global Issues and Acting Head of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. He also served as the Interim Country Director for Amnesty International Nigeria and as West Africa researcher. Makmid has held posts with Oxfam in Sierra Leone and the UK, and with Concern Worldwide in Sierra Leone. He has written several articles and reports on human rights and social justice issues for high-profile African and European publications and institutions. And if you missed it in the first episode, he first started as a journalist in Sierra Leone. So please, take another look and listen to the part 1 of the conversation if you haven't already. And right now we're picking up the conversation where Makmid is telling us a bit more about the work of the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund and the impact they're making in the regions where they've just started to blossom and look forward to growing across the continent. So you're early on in this work here. And so I'm sure that you have some measures of what the impact is and what the impact can be. In your first forays in working with communities, what have you seen as been effective and how has the public and also governments received your interventions or your works?
Yeah, so thank you very much. Now, this is where I market my achievements as an organization. So the ATGLF, since we started making grants in 2019, 2020, has achieved remarkable progress in terms of reviving the conversation about transitional justice. Because most times people deal with conflict and then they just want to move on to something else, but they haven't actually addressed the drivers of those conflicts, the root causes of those conflicts in a way that would prevent a recurrence. So what we have been able to do just by working with a selection of civil society groups and survivor groups was to bring those conversations back. Because if you don't remember your past, you're bound to repeat them. And for us, we want people to be reminded, through forms of memorialization on others, but also for that reminder to serve as a warning, to prevent repetition. So we have been able to do that in Sierra Leone. We've been able to do that in Liberia by reviving those discussions. And we were doing that not in a kind of very elitist way, because we are working with the people who were affected directly. So survivors talking about the experience, survivors engaging with other actors to say, this is what happened to us. Don't let it happen again to others. For Sierra Leone, for instance, we are celebrating today. Incidentally, is the 23rd of March when the first gunshots were fired, the start of the war in Sierra Leone 31 years ago. Wow. So if we don't have these conversations and we're seeing situations where some of those hallmarks of the conflicts are beginning to re-emerge, issues around social cohesion and fragments in the society are kind of popping up. So we have made significant progress in reviving the conversation and getting people to actually ask the right questions and holding local authorities accountable for putting the structures in place. Another thing that we've been able to do is support primarily survival-led organizations. So if you look at our grants, we were quite intentional in whom we give money. And we don't just give money, we provide technical assistance. Some of our grantees have never received money from anybody, but they've been doing the work on the field, providing psychosocial counseling and support for victims in IDP camps in places like Mali and in Nigeria. But they don't, or in Gambia. But nobody gives them money because they don't have the structures. They don't have that kind of typical NGO set up. So what we have been able to do is to break down those barriers that prevent people who do the work from accessing the resources that they need to do the work. Sure. So we go to them and say, okay, we know that you're doing this work. We know that you need resources, not just financial, but also technical. We are here to help you provide. And sometimes it's just small amounts, $10,000, $20,000. But the amount of work that these people will do with that money is just incredible. It can never be quantified. So that is what we've been doing. And we are very proud to say that some of the organizations that we have a significant percentage of our grantees who are first-time recipients of any form of donor amount money, from Liberia to Mali to Sierra Leone to the Gambia. And another thing that we did, which we were quite proud of, was not just to wait until they come and meet us, because we are in Ghana. We actually went to these countries, asked people, spoke to people, and then meet them in their own areas of convenience, in their space of convenience, and talk to them and say, okay, we have this money, this is our agenda. What is your plan? What is your agenda? How can we work together to advance this agenda? Not just for you, not just for our institutions, but also for the society in which you're operating and for this cause that you have passion for. So we go out. So we are different from other donors who wait until the call for proposal is out. We actually do direct solicitation. So that is something, and as a result of that, we've been able to fund organizations who have come up with very innovative ideas. For example, the Center for Memory and Reparations in Sierra Leone has built and set up the continent's first tomb of the unknown civilian as a form of memorialization to the thousands of civilians who were killed during the 10-year war in Sierra Leone. Most of the time when people set up memorial sites or tombs, they do it for the soldiers, the fighters, the fighting factions. So you will hear about the tomb of the unknown soldier, but you will never hear about the tomb of the unknown civilian. So through our grant, we have created Africa's first tomb of the unknown civilian. We are also supporting an organization in Liberia called the Liberia Massacre Survivors Association. From their name, you can tell where they are already, and that's the background. So what this group is doing is to identify massacre sites and mass graves that the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Commission was unable to identify or to mark and recognize because, of course, they were not adequately resourced, and they didn't have the mandates and time did not permit them to do so. So we're working with the survivors of these massacres, to tell us where the sites are. And what they have done is not just go and protect the sites, they've also digitized those sites so that these records will stand the test of time. They will be there for posterity. And just to go back to the tomb of the unknown civilian, what the guys and the Center for Memory and Reparations did was to collect the soil from each of the massacre sites, each of the identified massacre and mass grave sites that the TRC recognized, and use that soil to build the tomb. So it is a collection of people, of the lives of those people who nobody will remember or nobody will know, but they are now being remembered, and their souls are being respected and being dignified. And that is a form of healing. So we're doing that in Sierra Leone, we're doing that in Liberia. We're also supporting the digitization of war records. In Nigeria, we're working with, again, coming back to my question about the connections between my professional background as a journalist and as a media person. We brought that into the transitional justice grant making, where we're supporting media institutions to publicize and disseminate the initiatives, the transitional justice initiatives that we are supporting in the various countries. There's an organization called Human Angle in Nigeria. Human Angle Media works to help in increasing the capacity of citizens, of victims and survivors to tell their own story in their own way through a platform that will not charge them money and will not. So they're telling their stories out. So we're supporting them. And as a result of our support, they have attracted additional support from bigger foundations and donors. We're doing the same for the Gambia, where because Jammeh, as a dictator, so many crimes that he committed in the Gambia, one of which was to claim that he will heal people who were witchcrafts. So there was a whole witchcraft campaign against witchcrafts, so-called witchcrafts in the Gambia. And many of those people who were called or arrested and described as witches were mostly old women, widows, people in societies who were just vulnerable generally. So what these people experienced on the Jammeh, many of them were forced to drink poisonous concoctions and subjected to all forms of torture, cruel and inhuman and degrading treatments. in the guise of Jammeh trying to heal them. And we were ostracized from their communities. And what happened was people politicized that. So people were using that campaign to point their neighbors and opponents who they had issues with. So if you belong to a political party and you're here and I don't like you, I'll point you and say this person is a witch, and then you get arrested and then taken to those witches healing houses and stuff. So many of these people came back to their communities, to their families, broken, deeply traumatized, betrayed and distressed, and many of them, because the stigma is already associated. So they couldn't live in the communities, they couldn't interact with their communities anymore. So as a result, they're just in their homes. So we are supporting an organization called Women's Association for Victims Empowerment, WAVE, in the Gambia, to work with these people, promote reconciliation, and promote it in a way that is not the kind of Western model of reconciliation. This is about, they call it in local Wolof, Kaira Bengo, Ka Kaira Balundi. It is a Mandingo Wolof phrase for peace talks, for peace building and reconciliation. So you sit under the tree, you discuss, again, a form of reconciliation and healing, but doing it at the local level. So you don't have to come and stand in front of a mic to narrate your ordeal. You stand or sit under a tree in your place of convenience in your community with others there, telling your stories about what happened, and the perpetrators in that same community coming out and apologizing and asking for forgiveness. So that's it. And then also people being re-embraced into their communities to ensure that they feel dignified again, their human dignity restored. So those are the kind of things that we are very proud of, those kind of locally led initiatives. I cannot go on and tell you about the long list of other projects, and about over 42 of them that we have funded. But the progress or the achievement that I think I could perhaps summarize, in addition to reviving the transitional justice discourse, in addition to supporting locally led initiative, is the policy level. Okay. At the policy level, engaging with governments to ensure that transitional justice mechanisms are embedded into governance issues, given premium. We are supporting, for instance, the popularization of the AU TJP, which is the African Union Transitional Justice Policy Framework. Now, the AU TJP is a framework, a document that the AU, in collaboration with civil society organizations, put together. They spent over 10 years working on it to ensure that states have a tool to use to deal with wrongs of the past, especially for post-conflict societies or societies dealing with transition. So we're supporting the popularization of that. We are also proud of the achievements in terms of our work around engaging women-led institutions and youth institutions or youth-led organizations that target the interest of youth. For instance, supporting the establishment of a transitional justice clinic, where people understand. I was speaking to a nephew the other day. They don't even know about the war in Sierra Leone because it's not exactly, and because it's not been taught in schools, and people in universities don't talk about the war in a way that some of us who experienced it will know. So and because of that, they are susceptible to be used for violence, to go and commit violence when it comes to elections and others. So taking that conversation to that generation is really crucial. And one way of doing it is through the form of a clinic where people can engage at their own level, use their own diction to help with education. Use of technology. I think I mentioned the digitization of the war records in Sierra Leone. We, as an institution, that is the ATGLF, we want to do transitional justice grant making differently. So when we talk about transitional justice, most times people just focus on going to court, like I said, going to court, working with and doing TRC and going to the ICC. We want to broaden the horizon, broaden the scope, going beyond the regular boundaries of transitional justice intervention. And so we are even supporting civil society to engage non-traditional TJ institutions like the tech industry, working with tech groups to do the digitization I mentioned, to digitize the records. Like society, we have our own log frame approach to doing things. But when you work with people in the private sector, in the other sector, you come with new ideas that you will not think of. You come with new approaches that will be impactful and that will just outlive the life of or the funded project.
Yeah. Legacy targeted.
Exactly.
You took us on a bit of a tour with your projects. And so I think this is a good segue into my Glocal Speak question. So we want to hear what you hear. So can you give us a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and how or why you came to value it as Glocal Speak?
That is an interesting one. Okay. Let me try and give this some thoughts because I probably need to segment the question, right?
Okay, so maybe by different geographies that you've lived in as local, or as different functions of the speech, right? So in this context or that context or another context.
Yeah. So for me, because I consider myself as a Pan-Africanist for a start, when the opportunity came to relocate back to the motherland, it was like that. Sure. I didn't even have to negotiate with family, of course, but it was just a no-brainer. And I left the UK at a time when I needed to leave the UK. Sure. It was after Brexit, which was the 2018 elections that happened, and things were just going down south in terms of respect for humanity or value for humanity, increase in racist and racial experiences and stuff. So I needed to come back home I want to avoid this cliche of coming back home to contribute. I needed to come back home to relearn being African because I'd been out for 10 years. I wanted to, although I was working in the continent as a researcher and being in Nigeria and all this, I wanted to come back home and relearn and provide an opportunity to explore other spaces and knowledge that the continent is offering, which is why moving from hardcore human rights research and advocacy into transitional justice grant making was an opportunity for learning. I'm a believer in the doctrines of Paulo Freire, the Brazilian writer and educationist. I believe in constant educating and edification. Yeah. So coming back to the continent was a form of me coming back to school to learn from the rich array of knowledge that is inherent, that is here, that is based here, that is being provided by the people that we are working with. I started by describing my craft as working with and for people. If you want to work with people, you need to learn how to work with people. If you want to work for people, you need to learn what is there for them, what they want, what kind of support they will need, which is what we're doing, which is why we go and do direct solicitation to go back and ask people, what can we do to support your cause? So coming back to the question of the Glocal, I think it's for people like us who've moved different continents. I remember going to Southeast Asia to do research on labor rights violations in Indonesia. Traveled to, when there was times when I would go to the farmlands, I would be the only Black person among, and even though it's in the global South, I was still different. Yeah. I came to Ghana, I'm just Charlie, and nobody will look at me, differently. Yeah. In the UK, when I was there, I would go to meetings, especially as you grow within the ladder, institutional ladder, your color code begins to kind of just reduce because you begin to see fewer people of your like. I'll be in meetings and I'll just take a look around and I'll be the only Black face and voice in the room. Here, my entire team is African. Yes. All my grantees, but we actually are very purposeful with our approach to grant making. We promote Afrocentrism, we promote Pan-Africanism because it is the lifeblood of this institution. It is if we want to transform the continent, we need to ensure that we transform the continent together with the people in the continent. And that is what ATGLF is. Our vision is to promote African agency in Africa. So coming back was to come and be part of that process, to come and not just claim to give, but to primarily receive the knowledge that is being shared. And then as I receive, and then I give out to those who definitely need it. And I think it's a journey that is going on and it will continue. And Ghana was a perfect destination for the learning process. Yeah. And not just because it is stable, but because of its history with Pan-Africanism and because of its rightful place in the continent as the beacon of not just democracy, but on stability and progress, but again, for Pan-Africanism. So we really here to not just preach it, but to practice it in a choice of country for the work that we do and the choice of country for the learning that we want to share.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said one word, here you're just Chale.
Exactly.
Would you say that is kind of a Ghana Glocal speak for you, Chale?
Yes, I think Chale, I have so many Glocal kind of words and phrases that I could use, but for now I'm in Ghana, so yes. Chale it is. Okay. Because I think the reason why I like Chale is it's gender neutral.
Yes.
So whereas in Nigeria, Oga is kind of is a bit it's kind of masculine, and in Sierra Leone we have words like bobo or bra, which also is a distinction of your status in society. The bobo is the junior and the bra is the senior, and again, but it's all refers to man. Yes. Yes, Chale. I have seen everybody is Chale, right?
It's like, oh, Chale. And it's so interesting because so many people say Chale is Glocal speak for them here in Ghana because it's one of those like adaptogenic words, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, because it means friend, it means, oh, hey, what's up, what's going on? Or, oh, it's like an expression of like, yeah. So that's a good one.
Yes.
So I love what you just said about, coming back to learn. And that was a really meaningful part of this discussion. What do you do? Well, the question is, what is your favorite or most innovative mindset hack? So this is something that you imagine, something that you know of, something that you practice. So how do you get your mind hacked into a zone of whether it's productivity or relaxation or just being? How do you do that?
So as somebody who's had a journey with a number of experiences, I've used a range of approaches to help with my mindset shifting, but also mindset protection. And during the war in Sierra Leone, I used to read a lot of books and listen to music. I do listen to a lot of Fela songs and Bob Marley songs, Northern Heritage songs, reggae, of course, and Afrobeats are my favorite. Way to reset the mind, but also to protect the mind from distractions, when thinking. So I also do reconnections with issues by reading books on history and histories of conflict and stuff. So, for instance, I recently reread the autobiography of a former president of Sierra Leone, President John Kaba, who actually led the peace process and was president when Sierra Leone declared the war done. There's a Sierra Leonean phrase for the war is over. A Creole phrase for the war is over. So reading his books was able to also reset the mind, was also able to kind of reposition me for the work that I'm doing, but for where the continent, and especially the subcontinent, is heading to with the increased number of coups and counter coups and constitutional changes. You're reading Justice's book and what he did as a leader, because I believe that we are suffering from a leadership deficit in the continent. And as a result of that, we don't have statesmen, persons to really make those decisions, make those sacrifices that will be felt and benefited by generations after. So reading helps me to refocus and reset and protect my mind space. And of course, like I said, music. The reason why music helps is that you do the resetting and by entertaining. It's edutainment, what I'm sure you are familiar with. You educate and entertain at the same time. And it helps to just put us in positions, when the Magan Heritage and the others live in another part of the world, right? But their experiences there are very relatable to our experiences here. Sure, yeah. If you listen to some of the songs, you think they'll be singing about your country. Exactly. So that helps you to also bring you back, that you're not alone in this. Actually, before you came, there was a meeting that I was in, and we were talking about solidarity. And these songs and those engagements help you to be in a space of solidarity, for you to empathize or sympathize with others. We're all in positions of privilege now, but there are hundreds and thousands of people out there. So, but when you hear these songs, when you read these books, and when you watch the news or read the news about what people are going through, unless you don't have a compassionate mind, you'll be able to relate and empathize, or just think of a way to help in one little way change that situation. So for me, that is what but I also go back to my experience as a war victim. I think at the end of the day, you have to come. Nobody who has experienced war wants war or any form of conflict a few thousand miles nearby. Nobody wants that. So for those of us who have experienced it, those of us who have survived it, we get, apprehensive when things that, kind of show up, things that are, so we've seen this before, So I was writing, this morning I was writing an article about the wounded society. We are living in a wounded society, and the woundedness is in the psyche. It's emotional, it's psychosocial. It is not necessarily physical. Although those who war wounded or amputees will tell you the wound is not just psychosocial, it's also physical. And I was writing it thinking, there's not a single society that is not wounded. And because of our experiences and because of historical experiences, this wound is being transferred from one generation to the other. So that also helps me to set my mind again to the work that I'm doing. To help with healing these wounds, to help with ensuring that generations afterwards don't get even more wounded. We have to do something. And one way of doing something is this kind of dialogic processes, engagements and discussions are providing solutions. I know a lot of people get fatigued. But it only takes a few minds and people to stop doing things for danger to happen.
Mm-hmm. So that, as you were saying this, I was thinking, okay, so how do we put you out of work? How do we get beyond having to have a transitional justice organization? So really looking globally, we are in the midst of, many conflicts, not just what's going on in Ukraine. We're in the midst of many conflicts. And you pointed out that we have a lack of statesmen, stateswomen. I would say that if we had more stateswomen, we probably would be in a better situation. Absolutely. But how do you, in terms of Solutionscape, where do you see yourself being put out of business? And I know you don't think of that, but let's put you out of business. Where do you see that happening?
So this is what, we've been, those of us who worked in development, the aim is to ensure that we are no longer relevant, right? To be providing funding and support for people to deal with transitional justice. I think once we firstly replace the value for humanity and life, I think that is one of the cheapest and most devalued commodity in the world right now is human life. Until we revalue, until we put people at the center of our actions, then it will be just talk. And that is why the ATGLF, we're centering victims and survivors, because they are the ones who can actually tell us how to fix the problems that we're experiencing. So talking about fixing, I think we need to fix our politics. Africa needs to fix its politics. And the politics is not just when it comes to elections. Politics goes beyond. In fact, the worst form of politics actually happens prior to and after the electioneering processes. So we have to fix our politics, and fixing politics requires us to create the space and the platforms that people from all walks of life are able to contest elections for elective positions. Women are given space and they are not subjected to all sorts of vulgarity and violence when they decide to come and stand for elected positions. And then, so that is with fixing politics, firstly bringing human life and respecting humanity and valuing human life. It's really critical, because until you know that your action will lead to somebody getting hurt, your action will lead to somebody getting killed, then you will be mindful with the kind of action that you take or the kind of utterances that you make. And then once we fix politics in terms of who we choose as our leaders, the people or the process of choosing our leaders and all of that, then we probably will be in a position where we start like reducing the need for conflict. Because the whole thing with us, what we do, if you find out the drivers for conflicts boil down to, primarily two things: power and wealth, or affluence. So if we are able to decentralize power by fixing politics, if we're able to take power and not just concentrate it in a few hands, then if we all have power, they will not be fighting for it, right? For one form of power. And this we can refer to not just the power to hold, but the power to be held. And, you have different forms of power: the power over and the power to. So until we decentralize both forms of power, fixing politics, then we will not be able to move on. Another thing that we could do is establish or facilitate a situation where our societies are enlightened enough to reject indoctrinations from people who come and lead us to conflicts. So I have used the word enlightenment, not education, because we can be educated, but we're not enlightened. So we need to have an enlightened society to know the difference between the need to not fight and shoot your brother or your sister over a politician, or the need to not take guns to make a case, to make a demand, and you can actually do protest. But for us to do that, the leaders also have to be enlightened to understand that if you get criticized by your masses, you don't need to lock them up. You don't need to. So the enlightenment is both ways, from the masses as well as the political and the so-called political elites. Another thing that I think could help is, again, perhaps linked to politics, is where institutions are allowed to function. Our judicial sector. We have seen incidences of capture, the judicial capture. You're familiar with state capture. But for a state to be captured, the various institutions are first captured. And the judiciary is one of those institutions that is always firstly captured. The lawmakers are captured by this in parliament, because when you start making bad laws, then they are badly interpreted to favor particular people. Then society is screwed. So we have to unshackle the grips on those institutions so that those institutions can function independently and efficiently for the masses, for the many, not the few. Right. I could go on, but I think those ones, and of course, very importantly, the women and our girls, they form the highest number of the population, highest percentage of the population. Again, this might sound very cliche, give women more space, but I think if you go back to the fixing politics, if we fix our politics, more women will feel more comfortable to stand for elective positions. Sure. And then we'll have a situation where there's equal competition or fair competition for those elective positions.
I think that is at the center of putting humans at the center. Until we recognize who is best equipped to do that, then that's when we're
making decisions based on merits rather than by connections.
Exactly. So let me switch lanes a little bit and ask you a little bit more about who you are when you're not working. And I usually ask, what are you? Are you a listener? Are you a reader or a watcher? And you've mentioned that you're a reader and that you are a listener, so you listen to music. But aside from that, or you can tell us what you watch, who are you when you're not in work mode?
When I'm not in work mode, a fan, somebody who wants to be around people happy and promoting laughter and watching football. I'm a huge football fan.
Okay,
I support Manchester United.
Okay.
And my local football team in Sierra Leone is my school's football club, Old Edwardians FC. And here in Ghana, I'm supporting Hearts of Oak.
Okay.
So I like to socialize. I do socialize. I go out. and have fun. My favorite sport in Ghana is plus 233. Okay. And for the live band, and Wednesdays are my favorite days because of the lipstick band, which is an all-female band. And I also do love to go from time to time to the Sky Bar and to Santuku restaurant. So yeah, so I enjoy the beach. I do love enjoy the beach. I love going to the beaches and just hang because I come from a coastal country as well. In Sierra Leone, we have loads of beaches there. I don't need to pay to go to my beach. In some countries you pay. I think here you pay.
Yeah. Here you pay for the better beaches. I took my father to the beach just yesterday, and I used to go to Bojo Beach in Botiano. Mm-hmm. And, over the years I've assessed it, and, sometimes it's worth now 25 cities, which is equivalent to basically $3, now with the raising costs. But I'm with you on I'm willing to pay for beaches because I'm a little bit of a beach snob. So I will say that. But so on that note, which is your favorite beach here in Ghana?
So this is one sad thing because I've not been able to fully explore the beaches in Ghana. I've only been to the Costa Beach Resort, which is in Cape Coast.
Which is lovely. That's
very lovely. Very, I really like it. Yes. And I've been to Adafoa. Not the you have Ada where you have the
lagoon side.
And then you have Adafoa, which is a smaller side on the other side of so they have really nice beaches as well, clean. And so those are the ones because of COVID. And when I moved, I've not been able to really fully explore the places. So it's been a bit restrictive, and which is a shame. But I enjoy my time at the beaches. I enjoy my time I like wildlife. Mm-hmm. Really like forests and stuff. Those things really get me. Actually, if you're talking about resetting so going to those places will really help me to just bring me back to normal and back to earth. So I really love the green and the beach. And what else do I do for fun apart from reading and the other? I do, of course, I mentioned watching football, right? Yes. But just hang out with friends, just interacting and socializing with people, whether in open bars and pubs. And I'm also Rotarian, and I do community service as part of a Rotary, Rotary's work. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Accra Ring Road Central. Okay. So that also helps with my network building and friendship and building my own community of people. I think those are the things. So outside of work, I'm just a regular guy who enjoys having fun.
Eats some good food, has some good drinks, and goes to the beach. I like it. Well, this has been so lovely. I thank you so much for spending some time with me on this afternoon. So before we go, I want to ask if you have any last words to share with our listeners.
So this is where I have to put my elevator pitch skills into practice now. I think my last kind of message would be for people to be kind with themselves and be kind with each other. We are all traumatized, and we should not re-traumatize each other by being horrible, being mean. We have to practice mindful communication. And mindful communication requires active listening and engaging with people, really listen to people, not just with what they say or what they are scared to say. And I think for us, especially for those of us working in this field, one of the things that I have learned just in this space, a short period of time in the space, is people have ideas. You just have to listen to them and give them the platform to share their ideas. And people have solutions. You just have to listen to their solutions with an open mind. And everybody has some element of kindness. You just have to demonstrate that you're also kind for them to bring that kindness out. And if we all it's hard for everybody to be positive, to be optimistic all the time. But if we can just try at least to demonstrate an element of optimism and positivity, the world will be different.
Those are great last words. Thank you for that. So, this has been another episode of the podcast. I want to thank you for joining us. As always, you can catch new episodes each and every Tuesday at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcast. Please do check out the show notes. We have rich show notes this week that you will find, and that's at the website, as well as always just great information for moving your self-discovery and discovery to another level. So until next time, bye for now.